You know, this video is not sponsored by Red Bull, but it's brought to you by Red Bull. Because it is 12:25 a.m., my friends, just past midnight. We're here on the launch night of the Switch 2. And while we've probably seen some unboxings, let's take a look at some of the questions and interesting observations I found about the Nintendo Switch 2. Because at first glance, this looks, I'll be honest, just like a Switch 1. It's got a different kickstand, it's got a nicer Joy-Con mechanism, but you know, it doesn't seem like the most exciting update at first. However, the closer you look at it, there are a lot of cool decisions they've made, some interesting things they've done, but also some stuff that just feels bizarre. What happens when you try to run a Switch 2 game in a Switch 1 and vice versa? Does it actually work? Especially with a game like this, which is meant for Switch 2, but might work on Switch 1? This is Hogwarts Legacy for the original Nintendo Switch. It should just pop up. Now, I do think that it's gonna ask me to download stuff. Yes, Hogwarts Legacy. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and close that out. So I'm gonna put our Switch 1 game in our Switch 2, and theoretically, the exact same thing. I'll open it up. It'll probably ask me for a download as well, but I'm gonna just try to start the software. Hogwarts Legacy. Surprise, surprise. Almost all Switch 1 games should work on Switch 2. Now, let's try the Switch 2 version of Hogwarts Legacy. I will say that you can tell a Switch 2 game because it is red as opposed to black, which looks kind of nice. Oh, it actually smells. So now that I've wiped off all my spit, let's put the Switch 2 Hogwarts Legacy in our Switch 1 and see what happens. Oh, the game card could not be read. Please remove it and reinsert it. Okay, so a Switch 2 game does not work in Switch 1, but I've heard that some Switch 2 edition games, even though they're not supposed to work, might work. Now let's put it into our Switch 2. To use this game key card, you'll need to download data. Essentially, these game key cards are physical games that you can buy and sell and trade. But essentially all they are is a physical license. It's much the same way that a disc works on like a PS5 or an Xbox Series X. It will download it, it'll all be running locally on the actual device. So you still need to download the 24 gigabytes for the game. But every time you want to play the game, you have to put the actual card in. Now, the next thing I want to try, even though I think I know the answer to this, is a proper full-fat Switch 2 game, which is going to be Cyberpunk. All right, so I put it in Switch Lite, and again, oh, interesting, this gives me a different error. Nintendo Switch 2 software cannot be played on the system. Interesting. And then if we put this in the Switch 2, theoretically it is the full game that's just ready to go. Yes, so Cyberpunk shows up. It does want to download, but I could just start the software. So some Switch 2 games will just run straight off the cart, which is nice because that means you don't have to, download 60 gigs of stuff. You don't have to, load up your micro SD card or whatever the case is. Then when it comes to Switch 1 games that have Switch 2 editions, there are two versions of these. So I've already loaded up Pokemon here. So if you go over to my Pokemon Scarlet or Violet, that is just a free upgrade. So I have loaded my Switch 1 game in it, it downloaded the update, my Switch 2 edition is ready to go, which is the way a lot of games are. However, some games, such as Tears of the Kingdom, are paid upgrades. So what happens when you put a paid upgrade Switch 1 game that needs a Switch 2 edition in your Switch 2? So Tears of the Kingdom upgrade pack is what I'm looking for. Switch 1 games that have Switch 2 paid upgrade packs still work as a Switch 1 edition. But if you want the upgraded graphics and yada, 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 you gotta get that pack. So I have two options here. I can pay $10 for it, or because I have my Switch Online expansion pack, I can just press the download button and it is going to just download it for free. Now that is only for a couple of Nintendo games. So what I've learned here is that while these two games are both called Hogwarts Legacy, they are totally different in every possible way. I can play the Switch 1 version on my Switch 2. Sure, great, whatever. If I want to play it with the upgraded graphics and all that kind of stuff, you gotta buy it again. So let's just be clear here. Switch 1 games, they work on Switch 2. Switch 1 games sometimes have a Switch 2 edition, which is either a free or paid upgrade, which will give you better graphics and whatnot. So some games, such as Pokemon, some of the Mario games, it's a free upgrade. Some games, like Legend of Zelda, it is a free upgrade if you're already a subscriber to Nintendo Switch Online. Some games you have to pay $10 or maybe $20 to get that Switch 2 edition. And some games, like Hogwarts Legacy, say f you, buy the game again. Simple, easy. I'm glad we needed an hour of our time to understand what actually works on this. I thought this was gonna be like a 3-second video, like, oh yeah, it works, blah, blah, blah. What is the best way to protect my Switch 2? Well, boy, oh boy, have I got good news for you. It's not this thing. It is our lovely channel sponsor, Dbrand, yes my friends, Dbrand have sponsored an Austin Evans video for the first time in a literal decade. Dbrand have two brand new products specifically meant for the Switch 2. Now they have the kill switch, but importantly they also have the Prism screen protector. It actually is idiot proof. Now let's try the kill switch, which has been specifically redesigned for the Switch 2. So the first part of the case, which does leave your kickstand exposed, although there is an additional piece if you want to cover that up. Your Switch is instantly more protected, more upgraded, and more hand-friendly. I throw it. Do I trust it?
Oh, Jesus Christ.
All right, we're gonna take off the top. Yeah, it works, and it's not cracked or scratched at all. If you'd like to protect your Switch with a kill switch, the Prism screen protector, all kind of great skins, head over to dbrand.com/AustinEvans. Thanks, Dbrand. See you in another decade when you decide to sponsor me again. The next question is probably the most important. Is the Switch 2 way too big? It's asked by Austin Evans. So compared to the Switch Lite, the Switch 2 looks huge, but compared to every other PC handheld, it's actually pretty reasonable. So we put it side by side with the Steam Deck. You'll see that the Steam Deck is bigger in every dimension. Even though it has a smaller screen, or yeah, slightly smaller screen, it is wider, it is taller, and it's certainly thicker than the actual Steam Deck. And it gets even worse when you go over to something like an ROG Ally X, which is also about the same footprint. It is way, way thicker than the actual Switch 2. And the biggest one that I've got right here is the Legion Go S, which looks hilarious compared to, I mean, it is absolutely huge. Top down, it's not that bad, but like, look at the thickness on this. I mean, it is basically two Switch 2s thick. If you've tried any of the other PC handhelds, I think the Switch 2 is very reasonable. I think it's slightly too big, if I'm honest with you, but you're talking to a guy who likes the Switch Lite. So yes, anonymous viewer, the Switch Lite is still the superior size, but the Switch 2 is fine. I have a question as far as, can you customize the theme or set your wallpaper, also just how's the software? So I'll say the software is very similar on Switch 2 to Switch 1, as I'm sure you can see just by looking at them. So let's actually hop in here and see. Themes, no. It's light and dark. Wow, revolutionary. So yeah, basically, the Switch 2 seems to have almost the exact same software. It's a little different. You can see that the UI is a little cleaner looking on Switch 2 compared to Switch 1. But no, as far as I can tell here, the software between Switch 1 and Switch 2 is nearly the same. Does it work in the Switch 1 dock? I don't think it'll fit in a Switch 1 dock. Well, no, there's no way it would even fit in a Switch 1 dock, right? So this is the dock from a Switch OLED, which I will show you. It just works, fits in no problem. If I try to put a Switch 2 in this exact same dock, it actually fits. Wait, oh no, you know what it does? It doesn't actually go all the way in. So it actually physically goes in, but there's something not allowing it to click.
Oh, I think it's the 2 slots on the bottom.
What are the display output options for resolution and frame rate? That one is actually fairly easy to answer. So I'm connected to a 4K 120 hertz, or actually 144 hertz OLED output. Yes, so 3840 by 2160, it's 60 hertz. However, I think you can also adjust, 120 hertz output. So specifically with this, you can only do 120 hertz if you're at 1080p or 1440. And it's nice to know that the internal display as well as external will support 120 hertz in certain games. I was able to try Metroid Prime at the initial hands-on. It did look very lovely at 1080p 120. So that is an option, but no, you cannot get 4K and 120 at the same time. You gotta pick. I will say, let's actually hop into a game real quick. So I'm gonna play Violet. Did I get the right edition of the, oh yeah, oh my God, it's 4K 60, holy. This is now upgraded from 1080p-ish to actual full 4K, or at least very close to 4K. And you can't see it in this video, but a super smooth 60 FPS. That looks great. Oh, it looks so good! What? Okay, well, he just disappeared. Wait, did he? Oh, yeah, he disappears and reappears really close to the camera. So, it's still Scarlet and Violet, you know, but I mean, this feels like the difference. It's probably a little hyperbole, but this feels like the difference between going from PS2 to PS3, right? Like a huge, huge jump in a game that, let's be honest, felt like it was always designed for the Switch 2 and they just crammed it into the Switch 1. Which leads me to, I think, one of the most pressing questions I got. Wait for the OLED or not? The fact that the Switch 2 is running with an LCD screen feels like it is literally perfect for a Switch 2 OLED. I think that's gonna come. The display on the Switch 2 is quite nice. Don't let it being a 1080p LCD fool you. in person, it's not quite as nice as the Switch OLED as far as like contrast, but this is a very, very good LCD. And it is 120 hertz and it does support variable refresh rate on the internal display, although weirdly, it doesn't actually support external variable refresh rate. But here's the thing. Where's my kill switch? The only other model that you should actually wait for is the Switch 2 Lite.
God damn it.
Look, okay, hear me out here. This thing is $450 and it's huge. Children are not gonna be able to afford a $450 large console. And instead, wouldn't it be such a lovely idea for them to fuse the Joy-Cons together, remove the video out in one of our USB ports, and then sell it to me for $300 and call it the Switch 2 Lite? That is something you could wait for. Other than that, the Switch 2, at first glance, seems like a very competent console. There have been some missteps with the Switch 2. There have been some mistakes that I think Nintendo have made when it came to messaging, when it came to the fact that this thing has been leaked and we've known almost everything about it for literal years. But here's the thing, it is finally here, and from first impressions, at least here in the United States, the launch was actually fairly smooth. There's a lot of stock, not enough, there's never gonna be enough, or at least it's gonna take a while, but quite a lot of stock. A lot of people were able to walk into the store an hour after the midnight launch and still just pick up a console off the shelf, which is something to be applauded when you can't keep anything in stock these days. Subscribe to the channel, my friends. Stay tuned because I'm going to go much more in depth. I have a lot of very cool ideas of things I want to try, test, and tune on the Switch 2. But I will say, while there's some complication, it's certainly expensive. It is not a complete no-brainer, especially if you're perfectly happy with your Switch Lite, which is of course the superior Switch. But first impressions are really quite good. Like, they didn't have to reinvent the wheel. They certainly didn't. But what they have redone here is pretty much an upgrade across the board.